Welcome to How to Retail. I'm Ryan Edwards, and today we're at HAPA in the Tannery in Christchurch, and we're about to go and meet the owner and operator, Maureen Taane.
I'm Maureen Taane. This is my business, HAPA. So HAPA is a Māori word that means something that's not quite perfect. So something that doesn't fit neatly into a category or a space, or isn't something that's sort of machined or computer designed. So we thought it was a perfect fit for what we do, because most of our products are locally made, handmade, designed by people. So there's like a handprint of the maker on everything we do. So sometimes it's not perfect, but I think that there's a certain joy in that. You know, you pick up something and you can see that it's clearly made by somebody, as opposed to a computer-aided program. So yeah, the name seems to fit us.
So you said we. Who is HAPA?
Well, we is me and my partner Blair, but I think in the Māori world, when we talk about we really talk about everybody in my whānau. So, you know, we're a whānau business. My sister, my brother, my parents, my daughter were all involved in some aspect of the business. When I started this journey in 2011, I started it with a business partner, Yuri. She's gone on, she's moved back to her home in Spain, so it's been me mostly since 2016. So we've had a few changes in our business over time, not just externally, but internally as well. But that's the great thing about a small business, is that you can be mobile and responsive to the things that are happening within and around you.
How much of a factor has e-commerce been on your business? It's
been massive for us. I feel quite lucky because we've had a great website since 2012. When COVID happened, that just geared up dramatically. I don't think it would be over the top to say that it saved our business, really, e-commerce. Because of course that was the only way anyone could do any shopping, and sure, there's disaster happening all around us, but people still have birthdays and weddings, and people want to feel good and they want to reach out and connect, and during that time the internet was one of the few ways that we could do that. So having a really good functioning website was an absolute saviour for us. The challenge was navigating things like getting products to customers, because obviously during particular levels in lockdown we couldn't actually deliver anything. So we were asking for a lot of trust from our customers. Sure, you can shop with us, you just might not get that item for another 5 weeks, because of course when we were actually able to get a courier deliveries up and running again, they were so overwhelmed, as you'd know. So people were having to wait a considerable amount of time, but that revenue that was gathered during that time was fantastic. We've got a really good Shopify website, and I spent a lot of time in lockdown just really making sure it was as smart and responsive and representative of us as possible. We use Xero for accounting and Vend for our POS system, so the three things talk to each other. So having that having that wrapping around our business really made all the difference. And going forward, I'm putting more effort into that area as well. It's almost like it's another store. So we've got a store in town, a store here at the Tannery, but the online store is powerful in its own right. So we're very grateful that when this crisis happened, we were already in a good space, rather than scrambling to get ourselves together in that area at the time.
I'd be really interested to know, how have you managed through some of the challenges you've faced?
I think the genesis of our business came from challenge. So when those big earthquakes rolled through 2011, the business that I was working in closed that day, like many did. And I was in that space of that fight or flight space where you're like, well, I've still got to pay bills, I've got to feed my family. What skills do I have? What job could possibly exist for me in this kind of crazy new world? And, back in those days, there was crazy talk that we were going to rebuild the city somewhere else, in Hagley Park, Central City. Long story short, I looked at the skill set I had and I thought, okay, so I'll take the skill set I have, I'll open a design store, a gift store focusing on local design, kind of create an outlet for people that didn't have anywhere to put their taonga. So it was a pretty humble beginning. I heard about the Container Mall, which you may have seen. That came about in October 2011, so that was built, and when that opened, that was also the first time that people were able to access the central city. So that was it was an incredible experience. 23,000 people came into the city the day we opened. It was overwhelming. You know, up until the day we opened, we thought, do people want to come? Are they going to be afraid to come back into the central city? And when they get here, are they going to be really overwhelmed at what they find? Because there'd been just wholesale demolition through the whole central city, and a lot of people wouldn't have known that because they hadn't been in. So day one was insane, and we opened all of it. We all had a 6-month lease, which in itself is challenging because, you know, if you want to do a fit out, you had to think about longevity. Like, that lease was only 6 months long, so you don't want to spend too much on a fit out and potentially have to move your business again. The whole area was under army cordon, so we would have to sign in and out each day and be escorted in. We had to wear PPE, you know, it was interesting times. And then we couldn't get insurance because nobody wanted to insure a new business post-quake. Earthquakes rolling through sometimes, you know, every 4 or 5 minutes, so we couldn't stock glass or ceramics. Many challenges. Meanwhile, demolition happening all around you, and then so the ground is constantly shaking, and then you're worried about is there asbestos in those buildings that are coming down around us with clouds of dust? Yeah, so we started there. Fast forward to last year, and when COVID came along, it felt like a very familiar space for us. That space of having to dig deep, to assess, to look at what you're doing well, what you're not doing well, the areas that you need to immediately power up in order to meet the challenge. So sometimes I think that for any business in Christchurch, COVID, is a disaster, but it was on a more manageable scale because, you know, in 2011, disaster felt like the end of the world. The kind of assistance that was coming our way was haphazard and not necessarily the kind of assistance that you needed to get up and running immediately. Whereas when COVID happened, the government response was immediate and powerful. You're trying to save your life, you're trying to save your business, your family are in turmoil, you're digging out liquefaction, your sewage systems aren't working, you might not have power or water. So that's disaster on a whole nother level. Not minimising COVID, obviously, but it was a different kind of challenge, and I think that we were already in a good space to deal with what was coming.
You've moved locations more than once. What was the prompting behind that?
When the Container Mall closed, and we spent about 8 months trying to find a new space in the inner city, we ended up moving into a new location. So there were some massive changes around taking on a tenancy in a new build, some of which we were prepared for, some of which was a new challenge all by itself around consent process and the costs involved. Every time we move, we learn something, and it's, you know, kind of like you squirrel away that information. And I like to think that next time we move into a new build, then, you know, we'll be ahead of the game. There'll be another challenge, of course, but I feel like we'll be able to be more smarter about how we do things. It's a little bit like moving house, you know. It's joyful and painful at the same time. You get to reorganise all your stuff. You get to fix problems that you had in your previous location. You get to showcase things in a different way, because you learn, every time you get a new product and you move it around in different places and you find a sweet spot. You go, okay, that is what works for that product. Locked into my head. Painful part of moving, obviously, is packing in and packing out. I think we're a bit of a pro at that now. The rule is don't throw away the boxes, don't throw away anything. Any packaging that comes into this business stays here, and we reuse it with, sending out website orders or moving stock between stores, so a little bit of a squirrel in that way, but also known as sustainability.
What are the benefits of having 2 business locations?
There are many benefits of having 2 stores. There are a lot of economies that you can make across 2 stores in the same city. It wasn't our intention to have two stores. We actually set the tannery store up because the container mall lease was coming to an end. And I just wanted to be able to hit the ground running. And then they extended the lease in the city. So I was like, okay, I'm caught between 2 spaces here. I'm just going to roll with this. Again, one of the lovely things that you can do when you're a small business, be a little bit mobile on your feet. As it turned out, it was actually a really great decision. And so here we are still with 2 stores, because they both cater to slightly different markets in different ways. So here at the tannery, we get strong, very loyal local support, but also a lot of support from the south side of the city, because it's actually really easy to get here down Brougham Street. So Rolleston, Hornby, Cashmere, they all come here, which is great. In the central city, we've got strong local support from the people that work in the area. So we're on the ground level on a commercial development that's got 3 stories above us, law firm, Te Puni Kōkiri, so probably around 500 inner city workers directly on our doorstep. Of course, we did a due diligence in that area, and we knew that would be a great spot for us, and that works really well. COVID did change things a little, because people discovered that they love to work from home, and I don't blame them. I'm sure it's lovely. But that has had an impact on the amount of people on the ground in the central city. So that again is where the online side of things really kicks in for the positive, because we notice a lot of our online sales are actually coming from the Aotearoa area. So that tells me that people who were formerly working in town a lot and are now working from home are still supporting us, but just in a different way.
What words of advice, what guidance would you give to small businesses or retailers?
It's always hard to step back and look at what you do from the outside. Like for me, I feel like a salmon swimming upstream all the time, like constantly hustling, constantly trying to think about what could I be doing better. Take advantage of what's out there. So when COVID hit, obviously we got the wages subsidy, massive save for the business. I took on the IRD loan. I heard about the Regional Business Partners Network funding, got that twice, once for accounting support and once for marketing support. So it kind of is, it's on you to find that those tools. There's organisations out there that can, support you in various ways, business associations and bits and pieces, and those are great too. But being a fairly sort of headstrong person, I go looking for it. I go looking for it, and I share that information when I find it. So if you find a tip or a trick that works for you, then we share that information freely. And I'm not sure that's something that big business would do. But it's certainly something that works for small business, is that, you've always got your hand out, trying to, not hand out, but as in you want to support the people around you, because especially in a place like the tannery, we're all made up of small business owners. So we need all of us to do well for this area to do well. So, keep your head up and your eyes open, and lead with kindness, but strength. Yeah.
So Maureen, what's next for HAPA?
What's next? If you'd asked me that a few years ago, I would have had a solid answer for you. At the moment, I'm watching and observing, and I'm seeing what's happening around us. What I'd like to do is open a store in the North Island, and I've done a lot of research on where that might be, but things have changed, obviously, post-COVID. So I'm in a little bit of a holding pattern. So our plan is probably to hold off on that decision right now until things are a little bit clearer, and maybe to focus on, spend some time focusing on areas of the business that need my attention. Because everyone always says to you, don't work in your business, work on it. But I don't think any small business owner ever really took that as great advice, because in order for me to work on the business, that means that someone else has to step in and do what I do inside the business. So working towards that, working towards working less hours in the business so I can spend more time working out ways to scale up what we do without changing what we do is what I'm going to do.